remember I used to brush my teeth every morning, every night. I could never look in the mirror.
Wow.
So I'd always be brushing my teeth.
Couldn't even look at yourself, right?
Because I didn't want to see what was staring back. That is how lost I'd got. And I went that same period, I wanted to diet every day.
Yeah.
And every time I did drugs, I would pray.
Yeah.
If there was a God, please don't let me wake up.
Rob Sharp, welcome to the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. We met briefly before we climbed a big mountain, but I met you properly at Kilimanjaro. What an experience.
Yep.
We'll talk about that. Before we go into all that kind of stuff, tell the audience what you do now.
So I basically own an umbrella company. I've been in the industry I had sort of a 3-year sabbatical, but about 17 years.
Right.
So I'm just conscious the word umbrella company doesn't always inspire confidence in some. But look, we try and make a difference in terms of what we do, in terms of what we stand for, the DNA of our business, the DNA of our staff, of me. Is it challenging? Yes. But it's a challenge that we gratefully accept each and every day. So there's some days I don't enjoy it. There's other days where I do, but by and large, it's what I know and what I'm good at. So
I want to delve into that because obviously I'm in recruitment. It kind of overlaps quite a lot there. And I want to talk about that DNA piece, but I want to know about, and so does the audience, about the real Rob. So your journey to becoming a founder of an umbrella company. Talk about that. So paint us a picture since school, mate.
Where do you start? It's funny. I think early on in life, I have 3 memories of life: violence, football, and the birth of my younger brother. It's funny. I once wrote a life story, and we'll probably get to this part later in the conversation. And actually my first memory in life, I don't recall till I'm about 5 or 6 years old. Mm-hmm. I remember one thing, which was falling out of a car, but I guess the theme is, and was always, certainly when I was young, was pain. It was, it just was it was synonymous with my upbringing. Right. And I then always had football as my release from all of that. It's honestly, it's actually quite hard to articulate when I'm sitting here trying to think about that, but they were probably the 3 core elements of my childhood. 3
completely different elements there. Let's talk about the violence.
Look, I think it's important to be balanced here. Generationally, I think we lived in to where we are now in the world and certainly in society and people's beliefs in this. It didn't exist in that same way back in my childhood.
What do you mean, those? What do you mean?
Well, I think physical punishment was an expectation. I think it was a given. Now, whether one agrees with that or not.
I know what you mean. My dad used to whack me across the arse with this really hard slipper and all that kind of stuff. I've put my hands on my head, I've got the cane and all that,
Yeah, and it was the norm. And that was very much the same as mine. Like I personally, I think it was OTT. I would actually refer to it in some instances as beatings.
Wow.
And it had a profound impact on me. I think.
How old are you when this was happening, though?
From 6 years old, probably earlier. But I really remember from 6 upwards.
What sort of things was it your father or your dad?
Yeah. I think, do you know what, for me, Chris, it was, and later on in life, I sort of understand, it was the whole process. So it was being told by my mum, go upstairs, wait for your dad. That was, to me, fucking torture.
Wow.
Because sometimes it'd be an hour, sometimes it'd be 2 hours. Waiting for the inevitable to come was hard. And my family's origins are Irish. They used to have a saying like, tell the truth and shame the devil. So if you tell the truth, you won't get punished.
Right.
but even when we told the truth, you'd get punished.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was hard. And some of them, I could still tell you right now, and actually it transpires it wasn't actually my dad, it was my stepdad. I could tell you every crevice of his hand. I could tell you how rough the skin on his hands feels. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
It was hard. It was hard. And I don't have particular memories of school.
No, yeah.
I don't have particular memories of, I've got one or two. I don't want to be, oh my God, like this was so terrible, but that's the predominant memories of life.
Yeah. And as you say, it's not just the physical, which is torture in itself. It's the emotional, non-physical stuff, the build up to it, the actual thing that happened to you, and also the aftermath of that.
Yeah. Psychologically, yeah. It's funny, I was in Sainsbury's 2 days ago, and I heard someone on the phone saying, don't worry about that. Kids forget, they're resilient. And I literally walked off and just started like chuckling, thinking, you haven't got a fucking clue.
Yeah.
And again, as we delve deeper, everything that happened in my life, that is still the one thing that probably sits more prominently with me than anything, because it shaped what was then to come.
Yeah.
And it shaped my psychology, my understanding, the choices that I made. And I've, like we all do, I sit there and there's been days where I ponder and think, who would I have been in those preceding years had that not happened?
Who do you think you would have been?
It's an impossible question to answer, because it's, hypotheticals, hindsight.
You're right. So how has it affected you? I'm assuming it's affected your confidence, your relationships, everything.
Yeah, it's strange because sort of as I came out of primary school and it was still very, very prominent, and I got into secondary school, I think it had shaped a lot of, in fact, sorry, there's a better way. I had no issue at 11, 12 years old with authority. I had literally, from that early, anything of an authoritative figure, I was like, fuck you. Like, so at school, I had no respect for the teachers.
Sure, right.
I didn't care. I already had a mentality of I don't care about consequences. There are no consequences.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing that changed me, though, is that the bullied became the bully.
Right.
And as I sort of got older and longer in my secondary school life, I actually became everything that I absolutely hated. And that scarred me. That scarred me badly. Especially now looking back and even sitting here speaking to you, it makes my hands go clammy.
Yeah. Yeah. So what turned the corner for you? Because having known you for quite a short period of time, I think you're one of the most stand-up, genuine, kind, generous person I've ever met, really, mate. And you bring something to my life that is hard to describe. You're such a great guy. So, but ordinarily, you'd think, as you've just outlined, that when that happens, you then turn into the person that's done it to you. But obviously, you're not that person now. So,
there was a huge additional journeys, events in there. It's funny. I look now at all these young so-called influencers, and good luck to them. I struggle with that because at that age, to where I am now, and I dare say you understand this as well.
Yeah.
How different are we now to?
Oh, mate.
Or a better question: if you could go back in time and tell your younger self.
Oh. I was like two different people. I remember actually I used to be a little bit like that. I used to push people over in the playground. I just got a flashback from what you just said there. And I turned to addiction, mate. I became very selfish and egotistical and kind of all these kind of things. And it was a real journey for me now. And it's almost like I've gone from boy to man. People wouldn't be friends with me back then. I wouldn't have any of those people in my life now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's funny because I had to leave school early in the end.
Right.
And I think that that was quite a poignant moment as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think what that then led to next was where life changed.
Talk to us about that, mate.
So I left school. I went to my first job in London, which was actually, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then there was this course for hairdressing. So I was like, fuck it. Like, I kept getting pressured from my parents, like, you need to find a job. You need to, took the first thing that came along.
Yeah.
Hated it from day one.
Right.
And I got sexually assaulted. So
What, in the hairdressers?
not in the hairdressers, but on an evening out.
Wow.
So by a man. And mate, I wasn't even 18 at that point. And that's where life changed. In terms of, if you look at one cataclysmic event,
Yeah.
I think that then became the catalyst for everything that would then happen for the next 20 years or 18 years.
I mean, when that happened, what was your immediate emotion and what did you do after it?
It's funny. It's not funny, but it's funny. I have no memory of the next 48 hours in terms of what I felt. I guess I immediately, and I say I guess because it can only be a guess, but I must have just completely mentally shut down.
Yeah.
The irony is, Chris, is that after I started mentally coming to, I felt that I deserved that.
Right.
And because of everything that I did at school, everything I became at school, the bully I became at school, I actually felt like that is your punishment for the arsehole that you were at school and for all the misery that you heaped on people.
And did you talk to anyone about it?
No. Like I say, because I just became very insular. It's really strange because actually I didn't, like I say, I think because I felt like I deserved it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was like, and still even to this day, like at times I think that's your punishment.
You almost become numb to it. Or
absolutely bang on. It's just, it exists, but like wear it. Like again, I think because of then everything from a punishment standpoint that I'd been through as a kid, and even times where, you know, I felt that the punishment nowhere near fit the crime. Yeah, it was always take your licks. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you speak to anyone who went through what they deem physical abuse. Yeah. A lot of them saying I got to the same point where in the end, it don't matter how hard you get hit. Yeah. Like you stop crying. It must have made you so fucking resilient as well though, or not? No. Right. No. It went the other way. Yeah. So for 6 months, I used to, my grandparents, when they were alive, used to live in a place called Finsbury Park. Oh, right, yeah. And like, it's actually, what I'm about to say is not a slight. It was where my mind was. I always thought, and my grandparents had always said, like, Finsbury Park's really dangerous. You shouldn't walk around here. And, you know, once you get off the tube, you make sure you get here straight away. So I always had it in my brain and my head, like, oh, this is quiet. And I used to walk around like 2 o'clock in the morning and I would literally be like, please someone kill me. Like, please someone kill me. And that lasted for probably 6 months. Yeah. Where I just didn't care. But I didn't tell anyone that. Yeah. Like my grandparents would be like, why are you getting in at 2:30? I'd be like, I've been out having beers with work. That really resonates, that feeling of almost excitement that if you did die, the pain will be over and the world will be a better place and all that kind of stuff, right? It's the part where that was for the first time where I started wondering, where do I fit in the world? Yeah. And not just where do I fit in the world, but what's the point of me being in the world? Yeah. And I think that was the inception of my victim mentality, where that would then become my DNA for the next, like I say, up until I was probably 35 years old. Yeah, let's talk to us about that because I had similar
to you, and it's not about comparisons. Yours sound a lot more traumatic actually, but it was a female. My stepmom used to beat me up, all that kind of stuff, and what it did to me, I had abandonment, I had loads of stuff, but everyone's got their trauma and it's all relative, right? Yours sounds absolutely horrific. How it affected me was I just felt unworthy, I felt different, I felt shy, I just felt like everything was just different. I just felt I had no money either. I was living in a poor sort of council house. I just felt like I was inferior to fucking everybody.
Yeah. It's, I think you feel all those things and probably more. You know, it's hard. Like, I went to a boarding school. I want to be very, very honest here. I had a very privileged upbringing.
Right. Okay.
So I was insulated from the rest of the world. And,
yeah.
you know, and I want to very much express my gratitude to my mum for that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what that then took away was I don't ever recall someone telling me they love me, you know, because I was always at school. I didn't ever have that education of, this is how you conduct relationships. This is, you know, education about money, education about self-worth, or, you know, and at school, the school we went to, you know, you didn't really have punch-ups. It was all mental. So the mental banter at times was mental abuse. So when you then go out into the big wide world, I felt pretty naked, to be honest, because in hindsight, because actually I didn't have any understanding of how the world works. So when, with what you've just said there, like, categorically understand what you've said.
So you didn't have the kind of the normal kind of coming home to your parents kind of family unit. You were carrying all the shame and guilt. Guilt's the wrong feeling, but you carried that,
right,
as you've explained, from the beatings and the sexual abuse. So you wasn't taught how to nurture or be nurtured. All that shit, man.
It's like literally being ambushed.
Yeah.
Like with whatever's like your greatest fear.
Yeah.
And 1,000 times on top of that. And that's where, so you know, and this isn't my parents' fault, like, at all. But at school, for example, because we were boarders, so I've got an identical twin brother.
Right.
Me and my twin brother were boarders at school.
Okay.
So my family were my friends, because that's who you see pretty much 24/7. You know, again, back in the day, we used to go to school from 9 a.m. till 10 to 5 in the evening.
Right.
We'd have to go to Saturday school.
Yeah.
So genuinely, day in, day out, like, it's your friends. So I never really knew how to ever bring something like this to my mum anyway. But ultimately, I didn't want to tell anyone. And I didn't tell anyone for 4 years. You know, and I carried it. And like I say, it reverts back to what I felt, that because of who I've been at school, I deserve that.
So what sort of things were you doing at school then? You say you
mate, I was a bully, and I was a mental bully.
Right. Okay.
And I was fucking deplorable, mate.
Right, yeah.
It's funny, since leaving school, I've tried to make amends to certain people.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And, you know, some have been like one girl specifically, and I'm not going to say her name for her, but I cried when I got her response, because I looked at it and thought, how can you be that humane when someone, you know, and she was like, you weren't that bad. And maybe there's an element of how I perceive it to the reality. But I remember I was at the Daily Mirror at the time, and I was in Canary Wharf, and I saw another guy who I'd, you know, just barbs all the time. And I was like, his name, I just want to say I'm sorry. And he was like, Rob, fuck off. Literally. And it's,
right.
That's how it is. Like, you make your choices,
and you accept
Rob.
that, I guess,
Yeah, and that hurt me. And, you know, I think that's why I felt that was my punishment. And biggest of all, that's why for a long time, I felt I deserved it.
Has anyone told you that it's not your fault and you don't deserve it?
Yeah, I went through a lot of therapy.
And do you believe that?
Yeah.
Now you do.
I do, yeah.
You didn't then, right?
No, right. I can't understand, or I couldn't understand before, but I do now, of course.
Yeah.
You know, shit happens in life. But it doesn't mean it's right, but absolutely it's, you know, and I've spoken to others who've obviously been through the same.
Yeah.
The thing is, Chris, there was sexual assault was the first time I ever knew about sexual assault. My aunt and uncle owned a pub in Oxford, and we used to go and stay. I just remember his first name, a kid called Barry. And my first ever experience of that was we were staying at his house, and I heard his mum come in. And it was quite late. Me, my twin brother, Barry were upstairs asleep.
Yeah.
And it had happened to her. And I just remember her screams.
Wow.
And then it happened to someone else in my family before me. And that also had an impact in terms of it was when we found out to when it happened to me, it was in quite close proximity. And I saw the struggles that my family were going through. So I then didn't want to add to that burden of there being more.
Yeah.
And that's, again, one of the large reasons why I carried it with me and didn't tell anyone.
Yeah. You mentioned therapy, and you've also said that you were determined to make amends. Making amends is often something that's with those AA meetings and GA meetings, that kind of stuff, which I've been part of. Was it to do with that, the making amends, or was it something you did off your own volition?
Yeah, just
Right.
I saw a post coming in here this morning by Sarah Farmer.
Yeah,
we
great.
both
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And mate, in it was the word choice.
Yeah.
And like, I responded to it as I got older in life. And when I say I made these amends, like bro, these aren't long ago. Like this is maybe within the last 4 years.
Wow. Okay. How old are you now, mate?
44.
44.
So in last 5 years.
Yeah.
At times, that's when the opportunity presented itself to be able to, for me to make that amends. You know, but I take responsibility for every single choice I've made in life. And, you know, a lot of choices that I've made have caused my family pain, my friends pain, ultimately, and more importantly, myself a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I now understand the difference. Like when people say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that's such fucking bollocks. Bullshit. And it annoys me when I hear that because I think you can be, I can't change yesterday.
No. I
can change right now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. I think that's right, mate. I think that there's people who've got ADHD, there's people who've had trauma, there's people, and obviously I'm not downplaying what's happened to you and all happened to me because it's fucking horrific. But I do think that, and people have challenged me on this, I do think you do get a choice. You can either be the victim or you can harness that and try and do good. And I firmly believe that, you know, even the most heinous things that happen to you, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to downplay. I'm not saying that you can just click your finger and go, but do you know, what do you think about that?
I'm living proof of exactly what you've said, because that's, you know, after it, I mean, it, with the sexual abuse event, like actually I became quite at peace with it.
Yeah.
And I say at peace with it in terms of no one knew.
Yeah.
And it was something that I was going to carry forever and never tell anyone.
Yeah.
And then my twin brother got really ill and I thought he was going to die. So I told him and I was like, you fucking fight. You fight because this is what's happened.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. You live it for the pair of us. And little did I know that actually after telling him, I was in Portugal with my school friends and we'd all got pissed. We came back. One of my schoolmates, Simon, in front of everyone else, sat there and was like, "Rob, is it true you got bumped?"
What?
And mate, my fuck, that's where, in hindsight, that's the worst day of my life.
I was going to ask you that was one of my questions. I mean, fucking hell.
That was, and listen, I don't blame them. I want to be very, very clear. That's what we did.
And that was just banter in a way.
Absolutely.
But,
it
wasn't malicious, right?
No.
Yeah.
It was absolutely. And also at that age, you just don't believe it. You just think.
Oh, it's a bit insensitive at best, isn't it? Come on.
But we can say that at 44, Chris, it will roll reversal.
Right.
That's something that in that particular circle of friends, I'd have said myself.
Right. Okay.
It wasn't said with malice. It wasn't said to cause me harm.
See, on that point though, right? I think back in the day, that was how men, in particular, and women probably, sort of dealt with things, right?
That's how we engaged.
I mean, we couldn't have that anymore, mate. I think it's changed. Like me and you having these conversations. We had a few of these conversations on the mountain, right? I think that there's so much strength in just being open and talking about these things, as opposed to the banter. I think it's more of a manly thing to do, to talk about it than.
But there's still a stigma attached to it for men, and you know, it's like I still firmly believe that now. Like, and that's one of the reasons to sit here and be open. Yeah, and actually, you know, Amy said to me, "You're going to hold it back," and I was like, "No,"
because this is the thing, right? I've told my story quite a lot, and I know you're sitting there, and some people will think this, but categorically, I know for a fact you're not sitting there looking for sympathy. No. You're sitting there because it's probably a bit of therapy for you, but ultimately your intention is to if it helps one person, and people think, oh yeah, whatever, but I know that's true.
Yeah, and that was always. I just needed. So I found out that my mum also knew. So my brother had also told my mum.
Oh right.
But I found that out 2 weeks before I got married 2 years ago, or 18 months.
So
ago.
She was holding that for how long? What, years, decades?
So it would have been 21, so 21 years.
How did that affect you?
Mate, it killed me. It killed. I broke down in the kitchen with Amy. Look, my mum's reasons are her reasons. I'm never going to be able to sit here and give an opinion on that because they're hers. So, you know, but my belief as a parent is that your job is to protect your children. And my mum saw that my life was my choices. Again, I want to own that. Yeah. But that I was making choices that were causing me to fall apart. Yeah. And I promise you all, you know, okay, again, would it have been different? It's an impossible question to answer because, but I knew at that time, I just needed someone to tell me it's all right. And it's okay.
So she didn't not only tell you, she couldn't therefore also support you. So like a double blow, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I started after the school comment where I was in Portugal.
Yeah, of course.
That was the catalyst where I didn't do drugs, mate. I didn't do, I might smoke a bit of Bob Marley, but that was it.
Yeah.
I didn't do and I had no interest. I was playing football. I was playing at a pretty good level.
See, that surprises me because normally in these situations, people do violence, drink, drugs, or something. Yeah. You didn't get addicted to anything?
No.
Right.
Not straight off. And, it's funny because in hindsight, look, my wife watched a lot of these serial killer programs and all their DNA is exactly like what I've
you
gone
look
through.
A serial killer.
Yeah, well, I did this morning on the train, mate. But it's funny because I didn't. It wasn't, but I was so, because of childhood, going to school, I was quite insular by that point. So I had the ability to very much compartmentalize stuff.
Right, sure.
What I probably now realise in hindsight is that was just like a bubbling volcano. And, even after that event, I got to the point where it changed my relationship with my school friends still to this day. And it's not their fault, it's completely my fault.
Yeah.
But that was where, when you alluded to earlier, shame, guilt, all those, I thought they would always be laughing at me. Right. I thought that, and this was my mindset. I don't care if you're pink, blue, green, orange, what religion you are. Yeah. If you're a homosexual, bisexual, if you identify as a squirrel. But I literally thought that they thought I was gay. Do they think that? And not because I'm homophobic and I want to be very, but that's the craziness that was running through my head. Yeah. And that was still at a time where homosexuality isn't as rightly it is now, is accepted. Be you want to be in this world? Absolutely. Yeah. It wasn't like that then. And I think that's where the shields and the defences that I've been able to put up personally started absolutely falling down.
Right.
And it was after that the drugs started and the coping mechanism of using drugs started. And that's where we get into a whole different kettle of shit.
What sort of stuff were you doing then, mate?
Mate, you just kept, well, so I guess I never used drugs. In the beginning, it was fun, and I'm not saying to people, go and do drugs. Absolutely not. Because what you're about to hear is why you don't want to do them. But for me, it very quickly became the coping mechanism to deal with pain.
Of course. Yeah.
And
of course.
I realised that I was changing mentally. That's where I started feeling I was a fraud.
Right.
Because what the coke was doing was it was giving me an outfit to present to the world. That I'm this.
Yeah.
But inside I was dying.
Complete facade almost, mate, right?
It's like being in fancy dress every day.
Yeah.
But
it made you forget about the pain for a brief moment, right?
Yeah, mate, every time I used it.
Yeah.
And now that's why then it becomes more and more and more, because as we get older and, that furnace that I was referring to earlier, that's burst. That's erupted.
Yeah.
So you've got all of this fraudulent mindset that is then going at 500 mile an hour.
So how did that play out then?
I mean, I did some. There's certain things I can't say from a criminal standpoint,
right?
But I put my family through it, mate. Mm-hmm. My family had to pay off sums of money.
Yeah, right.
At one point, I was holding large amounts.
Oh, you're dealing as well, probably.
I wasn't dealing.
Right,
I never dealt. But I was holding large amounts for people because I lived on my own.
Were you doing sort of daily?
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So properly into it, right?
Yeah. And then I wigged out so badly.
Yeah.
I knew where it was. I went and chucked it in a river.
No.
Yeah, because I just freaked out.
Oh, right.
So, and then I've got people after me. I've got people after my younger brother.
They don't muck about, do they?
No, mate. And, and I had to come up with $5,000 and I didn't have the money.
Yeah.
And it was my family that had to bail me out. And I contributed not 1p. It was my twin brother, my mum, friends of my twin brother. And you'd think you'd stop there. Nope. I'd never did that part again, but it just that then just amped up the fraudulent element. You're nothing. You're going to be nothing. You don't deserve to be here. Shame, guilt.
Right. So you kind of almost forced into this life of crime or being devious, or you didn't know how to live a kind of straight and narrow normal life. Or
I didn't know what normality was. No. And I had what you've said there is actually such a strong point. I didn't know what normal was.
Yeah.
At all. And it just, I had 3 lives almost. The drugs just got worse and I became a pathological liar.
Right.
I'd lie to my family. I'd lie to my friends. I believed some of those lies.
Yeah.
And it was the longer I went in with drugs, my relationships with girlfriends, or there was 2 in that period of time.
Yeah.
Mate, my loyalty has always been my biggest strength and biggest weakness. But at that point in life, the minute that you hurt me,
that's it.
I was mortally wounded.
Right, yeah.
Mortally. I just became
I get that.
I see you next Tuesday. But the drugs just amplified that feeling.
It's almost like, how dare you do that?
Yeah.
And literally, the whole world comes crashing down.
Another person who's left me. Yeah. And it's that whole victim mentality. I was, and I used that to be able to do what I felt. I felt that the world owed me something.
Almost to a point where you're almost expecting it to happen again.
Yeah, I did. And then it did happen again.
Yeah, right.
I'm a great believer in, if you mentally set out, that's what you're going to get in return.
Yeah.
And the drugs, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And I lived 3 lives. I had the life that I wanted my family to see. I had my close group of friends where I live locally.
Yeah.
I had a life where they wanted to see, and then I had my drug life.
Right.
And Chris, I'd go 2-3 days. People wouldn't know where I was. And I was with, in most instances, absolute fucking strangers.
Yeah.
I'd be on a night out I don't know how it works, like, but anyone who's unfortunately done what we've done,
Yeah.
you attract the same people that are doing
you
it.
lose track of any kind of fucking
mate.
normality. You just think you can do anything you want, when you want, how you want.
And I did. And, I remember being in places where I'm like, even now, like, genuinely makes the pit of my stomach drop. Because I just think, what the fuck?
Yeah, not just lowering your standards, but like destructive.
But, yeah, because I didn't care.
No,
I didn't care, and the longer and the deeper and the darker I got there, it was killing my head.
Because there's almost a sense of familiarity, that feeling of you being fucked up and feeling this pain. It's like, I'm used to that, so I'm going to go for that.
It was safety.
Yeah.
And, and that lasted for 10 years.
Wow.
And I dismantled everything. I'm lucky that I've got friends. I miss Christmases with my family.
Yeah.
Because I was literally like on the sofa, absolutely out of my nut.
What was the turning point then? How did you get out of that?
It was my mum and my twin brother, really, because he's like, you can't do this. I'd gone to London, like, there'd been a 10-year period, and for 8 of those 10 years, I remember I used to brush my teeth every morning, every night. I could never look in the mirror.
Wow.
So I'd always be brushing my teeth.
Couldn't even look at yourself, right?
Because I didn't want to see what was staring back. That is how lost I'd got. And I went, that same period, I wanted to diet every day.
Yeah.
And I know I shared this with you when we was on Kelly, sorry.
Yeah.
But there was, every time I did drugs, I would pray.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not someone, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any God.
Yeah.
But I would pray to, if there was a God, please don't let me wake up. Every day. Like, and that was for probably 10 years.
Did you try to commit? Sorry, I'm not allowed to say that. You've got to say it differently. Did you try to end your life?
I did, yeah. I remember going into London. I got one of the last trains out. It was well late at night.
Yeah.
And I just walked round to the various bridges, and I was like, I'm doing it. And
looking forward to doing it, almost.
I just wanted to end it.
Yeah.
It got to a point where I never, like I said, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know. I had no direction. By that point as well, I'd got a lot older. I was sort of 34, 35. I was, I didn't have a professional career. Like, I was stealing money. What I mean by stealing money is I was going in and working for businesses. Well, I weren't working.
Right, I see, right.
So I was getting a salary.
Yeah, mugging them off.
I wasn't performing.
Right.
And for me, that was stealing money. And I went to London, walked around, and didn't have the courage to do it. So I then came home, I was looking at what my brothers were doing. I think I'd be good at that. I just had no identity. I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
I didn't believe I was good at anything.
Yeah.
And then it was my twin brother who turned around and was like, this can't go on. Like, and my family, they had to pay some more money back again.
Is this your mum and dad, or just?
No, so I don't know my dad. I've never met my biological dad.
Oh, I see. Your stepdad, I meant.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what happened to your dad, by the way?
No idea.
What, he abandoned you? Wasn't around?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
wow.
Mate, it's never been there.
Is it one of those where you feel that you can't miss something you never had, in a way? Or?
Oh no, I've got massive daddy issues, mate.
I was going to say you can't just say he was never. I mean, that might have affected you more than, or as bad, or certainly significantly as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, more so, like, mate, I'm a soppy shit. Like, you speak to Amy and she'd tell, watch a film and there is whether it's a son or a daughter.
You'd be blubbing your eyes out.
My God, mate, I don't need Kleenex, I need a tea towel. Because, but I'm at peace with that.
Yeah.
There was a very small period I tried to find him. But yeah, I've got I have no interest in that, and he made his choice, and that's the choice that he's going to live with.
Yeah. So was it your mum and your stepdad that was bailing you out then?
It was my mum, my stepdad, and my twin brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what they did, Chris, was they gave me an ultimatum. It was like, it's the last time we'll help you.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's time to help yourself. And
okay.
I then went to a therapy centre that dealt with behavioural, drugs, drink, any addiction, but then broke down behavioural elements. And I remember getting dropped off there on a Sunday night, and it wasn't a centre, so you lived actually in the houses that were, it was in Bury St Edmunds actually, it's not there anymore, which is, I'm gutted about. And I remember getting into my house, they check all your clothes, they check all the pockets in there, make sure that you aren't bringing stuff in, make like what they call contraband and phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember just literally crying like I was a newborn baby. But sorry, I was going to say, not crying because you look what your mum, you've put me here, or Mike, you've my stepbrother, my twin brother's name.
Yeah.
It was the first time I asked the question of myself.
Brilliant.
Like, and I just looked around and was like, how have you got here?
So that feels like a big turning point where you start to actually fucking feel, mate, and you allow yourself to cry, right?
Changed my life. Because I sat there for the first time and was like, right, whatever they ask of you, you do it. And you do it at 200%.
That must have been almost like a horrible, almost relief though as well, no?
Do you know what? I knew, because I think on the Monday morning, I had housemates that had been there for a lot longer than I had. So like they'd been going through the process themselves.
Yeah.
And they told me a lot of what was going to be the devil in the detail.
Yeah.
And I shit my pants because I was like, I don't want anyone knowing like my journey. But then I remember lying there and I couldn't sleep that night, and it was pitch black, but the darkness actually became my friend for that second, because I just was like, said to myself, like, Rob, your redemption is going to start in darkness.
Yes,
because you're going to have to go through that darkness.
Yes, mate.
To find the light.
Yes, mate.
And for the first time in 35 years, I had purpose for me.
Yeah.
And I got up the next day. And I went there with purpose.
This is what I was going to say to you next, right? In terms of that darkness, that's when, as you've brilliantly articulated, where the magic happens. But what you've been through is horrific. But I sense that you've harnessed it in a way that there is some positives that's come from it as well. Yeah.
Because it became about choice. And it became about two massive words that resonate with me and probably are the mantra of my personal life: choice and responsibility. Because the darkness part was, I had to take responsibility for what I'd done.
Yeah.
And by being able to take my responsibility, it meant that I started understanding you can't control what other people do.
Yeah.
You can't control what other people think. You can't control what other people say. I used to get really bent out of shape because I felt that during the period of time before I went in there, I became a very easy target for others.
Okay.
And they'd weaponise my struggles.
They saw vulnerability on your forehead, basically, or whatever.
But at the same time, like, one of my mates is sitting there and he's gambling away his family's but I now understand that people only talk about other people because they don't want to talk about themselves. So responsibility was, that's where it had to change.
But I think responsibility also in how you were almost parenting and talking and being with yourself, because up until that point you were beating yourself up and all this kind of stuff. So it feels as if you got to a point where you understood that what happened to you affected you, and you can't underplay that.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some sympathy and empathy there, but also I can still change my life.
Yeah. And you know what it was? It was, and my therapist, and I call him Yoda, because he honestly was a small black guy, and I love him. But what he did, he told me it was okay.
Yeah.
And to accept all of it.
Yeah.
And for someone to put their arm around you and say, it's okay. That's why maybe had I had that earlier, I said earlier it's impossible, but that's why I always ponder it, because the minute he did that, it was like I just tore everything off and was like, okay, and I had purpose.
Absolutely.
It changed my life.
Isn't it amazing how just an arm around you and someone telling you it's okay can transform and change your whole perception,
especially for men.
And that's all you wanted from your parents or whatever, right?
Yeah. You know, male suicide is higher.
Yeah, mate, yeah.
Exceptionally higher than female.
Yeah,
and I'm not trying to sexualise that. I'm just talking about actual matter-of-fact statistics.
I agree with you, to interrupt you there. I think there are a lot of areas where women are disadvantaged, and that is absolutely clear. But the male suicide rates are higher for a reason. And I think it is mainly down to purpose. And I think there's a bit of conjecture out there that men have it easier. I disagree with that in many aspects. In what aspects do you think that it's difficult for a man in this world?
I just still think it's the stigma. I think of, you know, and I think this is individually as men, we carry this. I don't apportion this to anyone, but I just think that it's that whole pride. You know, we can't show weakness. Vulnerability is a weakness. Being emotional is a weakness.
Yeah.
And they're all the things that you need to understand to be fucking alive.
Yeah, of course.
To know you're a human being.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't shy away from that. And that's one of the reasons why I was like, I will come here and I will say it all, because I want people to know I was vulnerable. I still get it now.
Yeah, mate.
I still get it.
Of course.
Mate, you know, I've not been well. Like, I was vulnerable. But life smacks you sometimes in the balls.
Of course it does, mate.
And it's all right to say, do you know what? I'm hurting with that.
Because, mate, at Kilimanjaro, you and Melissa and the other people were all leaders in their own right, but you were the one that was standing up there, leading the team, you know, doing your speeches, and ordinarily looking at you, no one would have a fucking Scooby-Doo that you went through all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, it's strange because I've actually think about this. I've always been in a fight, like whether that be my family, whether that be you know, the industry I now work in, but more importantly, my mind.
Yeah.
And it's funny because actually coming back from there, like I'm now weighing up everything I want to do because I've been fighting for so long. I don't want to do it. But because of obviously the unfortunate events that happened to us, where me and you were sat by the pool, just about to have our first bottle of Kilimanjaro, and then we get told what we got told.
Yeah.
You know, we had to fight to keep that alive. And I can always come alive in that sort of environment because it's something that is ingrained in my DNA and I'm very used to and sadly comfortable being.
This is what I mean though, because when I said she didn't make you resilient earlier and you went, no, I actually think it has. I disagree with you.
I think, okay, so reaching that summit, that was my moment. And I never, like when I first saw Leah's post, like, and I wanted to do it. I'm not saying this disrespectfully to any of you.
Yeah.
My first instinct was not, I'm going to want to climb it with you guys. You know, and I'm selfishly just being truthful here.
Yeah.
Kilimanjaro, I've always been obsessed with that mountain from 8 years old.
Right.
But I don't know what happened, but instantly when I saw it, it was like, this is my journey. And maybe I was just ready finally to go up somewhere and fucking get rid of it.
What did you get rid of on the top of that mountain?
Everything.
Right.
Mate, when you guys were getting your pictures, I went behind Uru Peak just before Sol came up and went, get back. This is where people fall off and die. And I think I said to you I was going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, in fact, actually, it's probably prudent. We got to Stella Point first, and as like the rest of us, there's this misconception that Kilimanjaro's easy. Anyone listening, go and do it and see it.
Good luck with that.
It is the hardest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah. And I'll ever do.
Yeah. And I got to Stella originally and was like, bollocks, I'm not going any further. I can't.
Yeah.
And the last memory in my head was my mum. And I'm going to keep that personal between my head. Mate, that's when I came alive.
Wow.
And I literally marched to Uru Peak.
No.
And in that moment, do you know what? For all the choices she made in my life, for whether I agree with them, whether I don't, whether I think it was physical abuse, whether she doesn't, you know, something in that moment went from resentment, anger to gratitude. And I strode to Uru Peak and then I took a video for my wife.
You're 18 years old kind of thing. Yeah.
It was the strongest I ever felt on that whole summit.
Wow. Phenomenal.
And and then I got to a point of 20 minutes down, I took my phone out to record a video for Amy.
Yeah.
And I looked back, I don't remember doing it, to be honest. But
it's all a bit delirious, weren't we?
mate, but I look back on it and it was like nothing but love in that video. And in that moment, you know, like I don't have a relationship with anyone in my family. I've been pariahed. My family are more interested in self-preservation, but that's their choice. But in that moment, I've got nothing but gratitude for everything that's ever happened in my life.
Yes.
It took me to that moment.
What a peaceful place to be,
mate.
right?
And then I got behind a sign and I threw it off the mountain. And I promise it made my back go funny now. Yeah. But it was like someone had come up with a key, unpadlocked a bolt with all these chains that fell off.
44 years of hurt, mate, coming out.
Instantly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I seriously, I reckon when we were on the way back, I felt like I was 6'6", not 6'2".
Well, you're tall enough already.
Yeah, mate. And honestly, but I just felt like I rose. And it's also one of the reasons to come and sit here and do this with you, because I feel that is completing my redemption. And I say, I'm not saying this in, oh my God, look at me.
No.
But for me personally, what I needed in my life. And since I've been back, like the anger, the pain, almost me being a little bit of an arsehole. You know,
it almost feels like you can start your life now.
It's gone, mate. Wow. It is, honestly, I've never, ever, ever, and I've just come out of being in hospital for 5 weeks. I've never felt happier.
Yeah.
And it's a freeing place to be, man.
Mate, I'm thrilled. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm thrilled for you, mate. It couldn't happen to a better person. I want to talk to you about the illness you've had recently as well, but also we're kind of running out of time a little bit. I want to touch a bit more on the family stuff and also the role that Amy's played in your life as well.
Yeah, she changed it. Yeah, you make me emotional now, but she saved my life. Her and my best friend, a guy called Dan Winger. I've got to like a bit different before I met you guys, but you know, when I was at secondary school, my housemaster said to me, "You'll get to a point in your life where you can count your real friends on one hand." Yeah, and I was like, "Rightio, mate. Like, you ain't seen what I'm going to be." And like, I understand that I've got friends, but my one constant has been my best friend, Dan Winger. Yeah, never judged me. He was always the one who'd be honest with me. Even when I was doing things that he knew I was full of shit about. Yeah. And he saved my life. I got to a point where I'd planned to kill myself and properly this time. Yeah. Because I just thought my family weren't calling me, my brothers weren't calling me. Right. I genuinely felt I'd no one, and he found me.
Unconditional love for you, right?
He found me and was like, "I'm coming to see you." And I would not be sat here today if it was. I would literally give my life for him in a second.
See, when you have that all the shit that you've been through, that is the grain of sand that makes you know that actually this world isn't, that there's love and there's goodness in this world, right?
Purpose, belonging.
Yeah.
You know, things we take for granted. I think every day. You know, he gave me that. One phone call, it genuinely saved my life.
You've mentioned purpose a lot, and it's the Purpose Leadership Podcast. What is your purpose, would you say? What is purpose to you?
Now, just be a good person. Genuinely. I don't care about money anymore. Yeah. I don't care. Like, stand up and be fucking counted. Yeah, that's how I view myself. Like, everything that you do, like, my purpose is to be the best person I can be whilst doing that. Yeah. And, you know, what do you stand for? What do I stand for? Yeah. Is my moral compass good? Yeah. Do I treat others the way I want to be treated?
And I think because you've been through so much shit, you've learned how not to be treated or treat other people, and you would never want to put people through that again. So almost in a way that the fucking harsh lesson that you've had has made you the person that you are to an extent.
100%. And you know what it is like, I get it wrong still.
Yeah, you're going to, mate. Yeah, of course.
And this is where, you know, and I can't underestimate, like, I suffered one of the things that was a consequence of all the drug abuse. And, you know, I was never an addict. Once I stopped doing that, I then got real bad anxiety. So I would literally have anxiety attacks where I couldn't communicate. Now, when I was using drugs, that gave me a great narrative to not have to tell anyone that. When I then met Amy, that was for the first time in my life exposed. I would literally have to go to a hotel, shut the curtains,
Wow.
be in darkness.
Yeah.
And she just helped me again really overcome that, and once again made me refocus on the responsibility part. And I've sort of went off on a tangent there because
No, it's fine.
still now, like, I have the ability to, when I've been a helmet, which I have, you know, and I am, and I do, I'm quickly able to now reflect on that and go,
Yeah, right.
do you know what, Rob? Like, that's on you, son.
Yeah.
You know, and that responsibility, and by being able to do that quicker, it means one thing I don't do now, and Amy has given me all of this.
Yeah.
She's the best person I know, but she's given me the ability to want to deal with it quicker,
but there's
and not do it again.
But also, I think you've deciphered the difference between taking proper responsibility and accountability versus beating yourself up for fucking everything. Because sometimes you can do that as well, right?
100%. And I think that was the last, what am I now, 44, the last 2 years, definitely that, you know, like what Amy and what Kilimanjaro have taught me is I've beat myself up for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And yet when we sit here and we talk about that, I'm actually mentally fucking strong.
Good.
You know,
you're proud.
I was just about to say, and actually, do you know, I accept what's happened. I can't change it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, if I had to relive life 1,000 times to be who I am as I sit here today,
fucking too right, mate.
I'll live it again, every single part of it 1,000 times. And that's the freeing part is I was petrified of what my journey would be when you have to start peeling back layers. But actually, Amy was the one that made me believe, like, peel them back.
Yeah.
Don't worry about them. Be who you want to be.
And love yourself,
I love
right?
her, man. Yeah. But behind every great man is a great woman, as they say.
Yeah.
But she gave me freedom mentally,
emotionally,
you know, and Christ, she puts up with some shit as well. I've got to be honest, she's a strong woman.
How do you feel about your family?
I love them. But, you know, it's funny. I read Stephen Bartlett's Sexy Millionaire book, and one of his mantras is, you know, don't fall out with family. You know what? Can't always be like that. Look, I don't have an interaction with any of them. But the world is run by narratives.
Yes.
Behind those narratives are unfortunately truths. And they have their truths, or they have their narratives, sorry, and they have their truths. I know the truths.
Yeah.
You know, I hurt my family a lot. I take and will always wear that responsibility badly.
Yeah.
To the point where, you know, if I could change that part, I would. But when I came out of focus, you know, of my therapy, and I was focused on, I said sorry to them all.
Right.
And I never since, before I went into, have I come out, have I been anything but supportive of my family. And that just wasn't reciprocated. No. And it became a point where, for mental health reasons, my twin brother's my hero. He's my hero. But for some reason, I am never going to be of equal footing, and that breaks me. You know, he was my best friend. We're twins. We're identical twins.
Yeah.
And I'll never understand it.
But it's one of those things that it's difficult to say. Is you can only control what you can control, can't you? And I don't think you reach a point where you can't keep not trying, but you can't. You just got to try and accept it, haven't you? Or
yeah. And do you know what it was, Chris? And this is for all of them. You know, I will say this part out loud. Do you know what? None of them reached out to me after being in hospital. None of them. And
wow. I
know some of them have seen it because some of them have been on my LinkedIn.
It's quite a serious illness you had, right?
Yeah, they thought I had a bleed on my brain, mate.
Bloody hell.
So, do you know what? Like,
well, that's really disheartening to not have even to ask how you are. Or whatever.
Yeah, mate. That puts a lump in my throat, mate. Whatever's happened, you know, I don't want any harm to come to anyone in my family, irrespective of what you did, what I perceive you've done, what you perceive I've done. You're still my family.
See, I can't understand that, and I don't like to judge anybody, but I like to think that if I do fall out with people, and it does happen, it's happened more so recently because I think I'm changing as a person. I think that family and or friends, if they're in that situation, you reach out to somebody, right? Well,
but choice.
Everything else goes out the window, doesn't it?
Mate, choice. You know, evidently I've hurt them to such a degree.
Yeah, but
That actually, but mate, that's the only way I can surmise it. And you know what? It's not for me to sit here and give an opinion on what I think from them. But yeah, it hurt. But
not surprised.
you know what, Chris? And this is very much how I look at now. I can't live my life
no,
to make someone else happy.
no, irrespective of who they are.
Anyone.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I've found this out, and probably a good way for me to end this. I always understand now that if I'm the best version of me, first and foremost, and I know that's quite a bit selfish, but anytime I've been the best version of me, everything else around me,
yes, absolutely,
is
totally
equally of a
brilliant,
a good footing.
We're coming to the close now. Just before we do close, mention anxious. Do you still suffer from anxiety? And what advice would you give people that do suffer from anxiety?
I haven't had an attack since Kili.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm best equipped to answer that question. I dealt with it in the wrong way. Wherever I was, I'd leave. It can be debilitating. It really can. So I would very much suggest anyone that has anxiety, acute anxiety, definitely speak to someone about it. It caused a lot of pain for me. It caused a lot of pain for Amy.
But I want to normalise it as well. I think everyone suffers from well-being, mental health, or some form of anxiety, depression, and it's an easy statement to make, but it's okay, right?
Look, I think society wants us to believe that we're well on top of this. And it's absolute garbage.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just quickly. So when they asked, did I want to be resuscitated when I was in hospital before they started the procedures, the doctor I was like, I'm 44, dude. I was like, I've still got bundles left. Yes, please.
Yeah.
The doctor told me that the reason that they asked people of my age now was as a result of COVID, because there is so much mental health problems that people younger than me were coming in asking not to be resuscitated.
I didn't even know that was the thing where you get asked the question. Wow.
Mate, literally, that's where my ass went.
Fucking
and
hell.
I knew it was serious because it was that question that I got asked. But actually, the more prominent thing for me wasn't them asking me that in hindsight. It was the reality that people are asking not to be resuscitated. Listen, being emotional, being vulnerable, suffering, that is part of being alive.
Yeah.
It is part of our everyday makeup.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening to this, I promise you, if there is ever a day where you're feeling like that, look at my LinkedIn profile, get my number, message me, call me, and I'll be there. I genuinely mean that for everyone.
And just touching on emotion, that's a lovely thing to say. Touching on emotions, mate. In terms of crying and feeling your emotions, that's kind of a normal thing for you nowadays, right? Whereas back yonder wasn't, no?
Yeah. I mean, I know I haven't really shed tears here, but my tears have been shed.
Yeah.
I actually came here with purpose, and obviously you said about Amy, it nearly made me wobble, but man, like I do it all the time. Like, and actually, I love a good cry now sometimes because actually it's releasing those emotions.
Yeah.
I do. If I'm hungover, like Amy deliberately will try and find a film.
Yeah.
Because she'll see me sitting there like, But
like
you know
Bambi
what?
or something.
Mate, I mean, what was we watched the other day, a Disney film? Big Six, is it? About a robot? Oh, my God, the end of it absolutely crippled me. But you know what? Like, be who you want to be.
Yeah.
I think it does. It burdens you. You make bad decisions.
I love that.
And bad choices.
Right. We haven't talked about business at all. We've got a couple of minutes left. You mentioned about your business and the DNA. Talk to us about why your business is different, where you want to go with it, and all that kind of stuff.
I think it's what we stand for. You know, look, again, I want to be quite balanced here, but our industry is plagued by the 1%. And what I say by and mean by the 1% is the 1% that knowingly, willingly, and by design exploit, steal, or abuse their position.
Yeah.
And what that 1% causes for the other 99% is that we all carry the same shit rep as everyone else.
Got you.
But again, it's narrative based. And, you know, what we stand for is more than that. And do you know what? We're not like our clients know we're not in it commercially. Like, and any one of our clients will tell you that we do what is best for you.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a one size shoe fits all policy.
Yeah.
You know, but I get frustrated because there's so much narrative, and it's like, be better.
Yeah.
Like, be better.
You can be a real human being and a business person as well, right?
Be better.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You're absolutely right. It encompasses that.
Yeah.
And what my fear is that these narratives are becoming the norm. And, the hardest thing in any walk of life is change. It's the one word that when you go change, people shit themselves. But things are changing. And we have a battle, I guess, of where we're trying to give what is a true and accurate narrative up against what is currently a power struggle for some. All we're doing is letting people like recruitment businesses and clients down, because it's not the reality.
No.
And there's horror story after horror story, and I think, be fucking better.
Well, you can have profit and purpose, but put it in the order of purpose before profit, and everyone wins, right?
Yeah, mate. But it's the complete opposite of that. It is profit over anything else.
Yeah, irrespective of the damage. Yeah.
And what we're doing is it's like, mate, it's temporary workforce who've got no idea.
No. Well,
and that for me is what's worse, is that we're exploiting
the manipulation of it.
Yeah, or we're deemed as an industry, all of us, to be exploiting these people when that's not the case.
No. Well, you're a break from the norm, mate. I know your business will go from strength to strength. So
I'd
heartily recommend your business to anyone in my sector, certainly. So where can people find you?
Orca Group, or www.orcapaygroup.
ORCA.
Yeah, ORCA. LinkedIn. I'm sure we'll share this and get it out there. But look, I just wanted to personally say thanks for giving me the opportunity and trusting me to come in, mate, and being able to bare my soul, buddy.
Loved it, mate. I feel like we need a pint now or something like that. But what a pleasure. Thanks so much, Rob.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
The Purpose-Led Leadership podcast is sponsored by Orca Pay Group. We've chosen to partner with Orca Pay Group because they are an umbrella and payroll company that leads with trust and transparency. They cultivate enduring partnerships with sustainable growth. They aspire to live in a world where umbrella and payroll companies are trusted, where confidence is earned and transparency is essential. They operate as strategic partners for growth. They are pioneers of exceptional service, and they put their recruitment agency partners and their contractor experience at the heart of everything they do.